Welcome, everyone, to the Shadows of the Moon podcast. I'm your host, Shadows of the Moon. If you're new here, welcome. This is the place where we talk about paranormal, cryptids, UFOs, self-help, and self-love, with some witchy talk thrown in there. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you like this show and be a part of it for a long, long time. If you're a returning listener, well, welcome back. I hope all is well with you. You know how this works. Grab yourself a drink, come sit by the cauldron, and let's shoot the shit for a while. And remember three things. 1, new podcasts are every Tuesday. 2, we go live every Thursday on YouTube, D-Live, Twitch, and Facebook, just to sit around and, once again, shoot the shit live. So come on by and jump in the conversation. And 3, if you would like to share a story, you can find all the links over at shadowsofthemoon.net, and everything you need is right there at your fingertips. And of course, links are always down in the description. So let's get this show on the road, guys. All right, guys, let's get to the stories and why we're here. So the black stickmen are entities that are one of the more fairly recent of cryptid sightings. And I don't know if I'd put it into the cryptid category because to me it's more paranormal, but I guess it could be cryptid. But however, they are linked to ancient beings depicted in some cave drawings, which some groups believe they're a sign of ancient aliens or extra-dimensional travelers. And there is a sighting from 1978, but most of them come from the early 2000s. But the one from 78, we will hear the encounter of that. So let's get into it. What does stickman look like? To people across the globe who have been seeing these two-dimensional, like pitch black beings, they appear to be, like I said, two-dimensional, and their appearance always looks the same, no matter what angle they're seen at. They are humanoid beings that resemble stick figure drawings. The classic, as we were a kid, how we draw people, right? In addition to that, black stickmen lack any facial features, which, whether it be eyes, a nose, a mouth, and despite the name, it is speculated that this species is entirely genderless. Black stickmen are said to they vary in height, some ranging from that of a normal human being to several feet in length. And much like the drawings, they are described as exceptionally thin, faceless, with oval or circular heads. But there also has been a few sightings that have seen them in white as well. And what is especially weird about these creatures is that how they appear to be entirely two-dimensional. They allegedly possess no shadow, and their methods of communication are also unclear. Witnesses have reported that black stickmen feel like they have static electricity around them. Unlike other paranormal creatures, black stickmen aren't connected to any particular paranormal event. Rather, they just manifest themselves without many prompts. As far as where these humanoids come from, we have no clue, but there are, of course, multiple theories. So one theory states that because of these two-dimensional physique, many conclude that they are most likely natives of other dimensions. Other theories say that black stickmen are actually demonic entities, similar to the shadow people. I can understand them being scary. I mean, no one really expects to see a two-dimensional creature in the shape of a classic stick figure strolling in the real world, right? I don't think they're demonic, to be honest. I don't think shadow people are demonic. That's just my take on things. What's your take? Anyway, getting back, black stickmen are also theorized to be peaceful entities. even aren't aware of their effects on humanity, and they simply just wish to travel around. Unlike certain kinds of ghosts, as well as certain kinds of cryptids, witnesses of stickmen all agree that these bizarre beings are quite aware of their surroundings, and that some appear to have powerful feelings and reactions to people when they see them. One witness said that he discovered a stickman in a hospital, and the stickman, upon seeing him, flailed its arms wildly in fear and loped away quickly. Others who have ran into the stickman say the stickman seemed to watch them in curiosity, or actually slowly pursue them once they realize that the witness has seen them. Some stickmen seem to stand motionless as soon as they see a person who takes notice of them, and as if they are hoping that the person will just walk away. So kind of like us backing up to a wall, closing our eyes, saying, "Hey, you can't see me. Go away now." No matter what the stickmen seem to be doing when they're seen by witnesses, every single witness who has ever seen a stickman seems to agree on one thing: the terrifying, crippling feeling of dread and fear that they experience in the presence of these beings. Now, to me, much of these feelings can be attributed to the fact that any experience with paranormal usually leaves a person that's not used to it feeling shaken, scared, or panicked, especially if the paranormal event is way stranger than anything that is normally discussed in supernatural circles. So, yeah, I can definitely, if you're not even the most seasoned investigators of the paranormal, when something odd and unexpected happens, we're human. You're going to get jumpy. You're going to get, shaken up a bit. But if you're not in the paranormal, like most of us are, to see something like that would terrify me. Like back in the day when I first started investigating, like in my teen years, everything scared me. You know what I mean? Before I even realized what was going on, just everything that happened scared me. So, especially paranormal stuff, right? As I've gotten more research into the field and more years on it, I'm not as scared, right? I jump scare, of course. Everybody does. And plus, I have an overactive sensitivity. So that makes me jump scare more easily. That's why people like messing with me, especially my son. He knows I jump scare, so it's his sworn duty to make me jump scare every time he walks into the room. But anyway, getting back, so yeah, even if you do get jump scared, whether you're seasoned or not in the paranormal, it's going to leave you with that shaken, scared, and panicked feeling. So, but however, the feelings that have been reported go as far to describe it is kind of like feeling of being around black-eyed kids, which suggests that the feeling may be a little bit deeper than a normal paranormal spook. Now, I don't know about you. I think it's the energy, right? Like, I've never seen one of these black stick men, and I'd probably freak if I did. Not gonna lie. Right? But to me, like, the energy when I'm explaining, and you guys have heard me talk about black-eyed children before, I've never experienced them myself, but what I feel when reading stories of black-eyed children is it's that how do you explain the feeling? And I came up with a great analogy. Now, most of us, because when we're kids, we're stupid, and we, check the voltage of a 9-volt battery on our tongue, right? I know you guys have done it. Don't say that you haven't. I sure the hell have. Many times, because I'm an idiot. No, but so So, you know that feeling you get, that cringy feeling? That's what I imagine when people say that they're around black eyed children. Or even for the fact that when I was talking about calling down a certain alien individual and got my ass kicked by the energy of it when it did happen. That's what I felt like, only whole body cringe, not just the 9-volt battery on the tongue zap, but that whole body cringe. That's all I can think about, and that's what I feel people experiencing black-eyed kids feel. Now, I've never, well, I have heard of people feeling that way around black stickmen, but not as like much so as black-eyed kids. I'd rather face a black stickman than black-eyed kids, I think. Not gonna lie. So, and it is also worth mentioning that stickman sightings are also associated with that feeling of static in the air, a low barometric pressure. And this may have something to do with their ability to be seen in our world. One of the things that makes stickmen so incredibly bizarre is that there is no real reason why they should exist, right? At least not in regular lore. Unlike ghosts, they don't have tragic stories that would tie them to this world. And unlike regular cryptids, they don't have a stomach, a brain, or even skin. Unlike, like shadow people or demons and vampires, they've never been associated with evil activity or ancient lore of some sort, except for like cave drawings. So it's unlikely that they're extraterrestrial in origin, but you don't know. They're just simply there, and they're appearing more and more frequently, it seems. Like, I'm hearing more and more stories of this. And some sites go so far to say that they're a new paranormal trend. Is it another wave of different things? I don't know. And the thing of it is, the stickman sightings can take place in almost any place imaginable. And there never seems to be like a pattern of any sorts. Some sightings have been seen in hospital wards. Others have taken place in the middle of suburban neighborhoods. One stickman was even seen balancing atop a power line. The only consistent remark that people tend to have about stickman sightings is that usually, they happen in places which don't have much light, such as alleyways, forests, and parking lots. So far, there aren't many theories that would accurately explain what these creatures are, or how they possibly exist. The most common theory is being circulated is that these are interdimensional beings. And they're simply exploring our world and observing the people in it. It would seem as though they don't ever really expect people to notice them, due to the fact that they are not of this dimensional plane. Which would be why the bizarre creatures seem to react the way they do when they realize a witness can see them. As one would expect with these kinds of bizarre incidents, a close second theory, if not evenly matched in popularity, is that these weird sightings are all in the minds of viewers. Still, it seems too coincidental that so many different people from so many different backgrounds would get so many sightings of a similar two-dimensional creature. Since the first major internet mention of the stickman phenomena in 2009, more and more sightings have been found throughout forums, bulletin boards, and even comments on blog postings. Every time a new stickman sighting comes out, it seems like there is more and more buzz. But it's understandable. I mean, that happened with Glimmerman. What I call Glimmerman. Glimmerman is like the Predator. Have you ever seen the Predator movie when he phases out and becomes invisible? and you can only see the outline. That's the Glimmer Man. A lot of sightings. Nobody heard of them back in the day. But once they came out, like more and more people are like, oh, I seen that. And that's, kind of like why I make the podcast and why we go live on Thursdays is because I want you to be able to bring your story to the table and not be judged about it. So, no one really knows much about these bizarre creatures. So, when a new sighting does come out, it's easy to get excited to see if there's a new piece of the stickman puzzle to examine. And for researchers like myself, that is so true when a new story comes out about anything, paranormal, cryptid, UFO, whatever. I'm usually there studying that, like piece by piece of what I haven't heard before and hoping for something new that will enlighten me, if that makes sense. So, will we ever really get down to the real facts of what stickmen are, how they exist, or where they even come from? Probably not, but we can always marvel at how incredibly bizarre they are. With that being said, let's get into some encounters. The first one comes from 1978, where there is a diary entry that they wrote down. It says, the following account is slightly shortened, but otherwise unchanged, and comes from my diary record for Tuesday, October 31st, 1978. Only the names have been changed, and we are all aged about 15 to 17 at the time. The Luce Valley referred to is near Maidstone in Kent. My diary record also indicates that there was a new moon on that night. I will record a rather unpleasant experience which took place tonight. A group of about 10 of us were sitting chatting in the Luce Valley at around midnight. After about 45 minutes, Will leapt to his feet, slapping his head, saying that there was a bee in his hair. He looked absolutely terrified. Both Dorothy and I saw the outline of a tall, thin figure wearing a hat dancing behind him. Will said later that it was as a terrifically loud buzzing was coming through the top of his head. However, only Rachel heard any buzzing. We particularly satisfied ourselves that it must have been a bee's nest, so we moved a little distance away. As we moved away, Dorothy and I saw a ring outline in the grass, which was where we had been sitting. Eventually, it started raining, so we headed for Rachel's house. As we left, I turned around and saw the same thin black figure walk across the opening between the trees to where we had been sitting. We had all been sitting in Rachel's bedroom for a while when I looked at Will, who was reading, and saw this big black blob drop out of his hair onto the bed. I was the only one who saw this. A few seconds later, a black shape started whizzing around. The main movement was from bottom to left to top right. The main movement was from bottom left to top right. As I was sitting, it was getting larger during the movement and inducing a great fright. About 4 people altogether saw this. Later, the girls slept in the room together. Apparently, Rachel and Molly saw the black blob in the curtains during the night. I, however, had an excellent night's sleep. And on first awakening, I saw the thin black figure silhouetted against the wardrobe doors. I must admit, I lost my calm last night and was bloody terrified by the whole thing. Crazy, right? I think that's the first time when I first read this story that I've ever heard like a blob-like figure. Now I've heard mist, I've heard, black mist, black fog, black. I don't think, at least what I'm seeing in my mind's eye, with like a dripping of a blob coming off of somebody's hair. I don't know. What do you guys think? This next incident occurred in August of 2016 in a tiny seaside town located on the Gulf Coast, about 90 minutes south of Houston. Jay, a 56-year-old man, was sitting in a chair in front of his home about 5:30 a.m. having a cigarette and a cup of coffee. Now, Jay is a level-headed person, doesn't spook easily, and doesn't buy into any of the paranormal hype that's so popular today. He feels that there is an explanation for everything, or at least he did. After a few minutes, he began to feel uneasy, but couldn't figure out why, because there was nothing about the morning to feel uneasy about. It finally dawned on him that he felt like he was being watched. He glanced around, but there was nobody there, and then he saw it. Hanging on the light pole across the street was what he could only be described as a thing. Now, this thing was black, and its body was about the size of a large dog. It was the arms and legs, if there were arms and legs, that looked as though they belonged to an entirely different creature. They were long and skinny. Very long and skinny. So long were the legs that it was standing on the ground. The creature would have been close to 6 feet tall. The arms were as long and skinny as the legs were. If it was unlike anything it was unlike anything Jay had ever seen in his life. It turned to look at Jay, or at least he felt it look at him. But there was no face to speak of. But even with the absence of a face, Jay said you could just feel the thing make eye contact with you. After Jay and the creature looked at each other, Jay said that the thing began to behave as though it had messed up by allowing itself to be seen. Like Jay had seen something he wasn't meant to see. At that point, the thing went up the pole using a hand-over-hand motion with its feet flat against the pole. Its limbs weren't wrapped around the pole, it just simply walked up the side. But it got about 3/4 up the way up the pole, it simply wasn't there anymore. Like it had stepped off into some sort of portal. When it got to be full daylight, Jay and his wife took a walk across the street to see if there was like any type of claw marks on the pole from the creature climbing. But to their shock, the pole was made of smooth aluminum. Jay and his wife kept looking for it for almost a year later. They still have not seen anything like that since. Crazy, right? Can you imagine seeing this thing? Sorry, dog is... I don't know what the dog's doing. Can you imagine seeing this thing? And being like, watch it walk up the pole and like, thinking it's a regular telephone pole made out of wood, right? And walking up there and it's aluminum. Crazy. Another encounter... This is from Reddit, and of course all the links will be in the description below. Since I had some experience as a child that I would consider paranormal. After my teenage years, I never really opened up about them to people because of how crazy it sounds. It wasn't until several years ago that I started researching on the internet and found I wasn't alone in seeing these strange creatures people were seeing all over the world. I know it might sound silly to some, but what it is, this is what I've experienced. Thank you for this. When I was growing up, I had a best friend who lived down the street. We lived in a quiet small town where her dad was always working. I would walk to her house every day after school, and we would often talk We would often take walks, walk to the liquor store to buy candy, etc. I would often see a stickman following us, peeking out from behind her couch. He was all black, but he could change sizes. Sometimes he was the size of a small cat, other times taller than a normal sized man. I felt very scared of him, and I felt he was mischievous at best, perhaps even evil. I finally got the courage to tell my best friend, and she admitting to seeing him too. I always got the feeling it was the same one every time. Not like two different stickmen, but the same one. One time he appeared in the shape of a stick figure horse, like a bad child's drawing. I always believed him to be somehow following me and watching me. Until when my best friend passed away suddenly, our senior year of high school. She had a generic heart condition, or genetic, sorry. She had a genetic heart condition that nobody, including herself, had known about. I've never seen what we call stickman ever again. I believe now perhaps that he's some form of Grim Reaper, awaiting his time to take my friend. I don't know. I just don't know if that's really the case. But it seems odd the sightings of him disappeared after she passed. What do you guys think? Maybe that's what he is. That's why he can transform. He has to transform to sneak around, right? I don't know. It's crazy. And we have one more, which is this is also on Reddit. I think I had a black stickman sighting about a year ago, but I think it attempted to touch or contact me in some way. They go on to say, so this occurred about a year ago. I had to walk to my bus stop on the way to school. Usually I'm driven, as it's about a half hour walk away, and my bus leaves at 7. But I had to walk up there this day. Anyways, I'm in the southern hemisphere, Australia specifically, placing this in the middle of winter when it was still pitch black outside. As I just got up to the end of the driveway where the road starts, I saw someone walking on the other side of the road. Their body was dead black, with no facial features or anything at all. This scared the shit out of me. Even more so as I live on a backcountry road with no one else around, meaning it just wasn't someone going for a walk. Terrified and hoping it was just someone going for a walk all the way out there for whatever reason, I tried to speak to them and just say hello. But they completely ignored me. So I got out my phone and I shone my torch on them. As I did, they disappeared. Starting where the torch was shining, then altogether. That was enough for me to nope the fuck out of there. And I started walking back towards my house. But I walked backwards, facing where I saw the entity, as this, you know how you do. You get nervous and you're like, you're not getting me as my back's turned to you. It said, as I walked backwards, facing where I saw the entity, I was far too scared to turn around. As I did, it came back into view, but much larger, 3 to 4 meters tall, when before it was the size of a normal person, and I could see it growing as it got larger. It continued to follow me back until I got back inside my house, where I just stayed. I ended up getting my mom to drive me to the bus stop instead, as I was far too scared to go outside and walk down there again. That's all there was to the encounter, but there's other things worth mentioning that I should probably note. They said this one was a one-off encounter. I never experienced or seen anything similar before or since. In the weeks following the encounter at night, I heard two people conversing, but couldn't make out any words. While I was either the only one home or everyone else was asleep. So he's basically hearing like EVPs in real time. It was ruled out by the doctor that it was psychosis or something similar. When I encountered it, immediately had the most fear I've ever felt before. But I wasn't frozen in place. I could still move. I also felt a general sense of dread, which is common from stickman sightings. That is true. Stickman sightings, when people have seen them, they instantly feel like dread or sad. It seemed to have multiple sides, but be 2D, like a sprite from an old Doom game. Not pixelated, though. And I played Doom, and I'll have to look that up. I cannot remember what the sprites look like. It said it was dead silence when I saw it, but I think I may have heard it walking. It was not gliding, and I could see it bobbing slightly as it walked. Doo-doo-doo. It did not look at me until I started retracting, when it was staring at me and coming towards me fastly. It had no facial features of any sort. I didn't notice any air illusions around it that I can remember. It seemed more bulky than normal stickmen. It was more like what you could see. It was more like what you see on the bathroom female male signs on the bathroom doors. For a few weeks after the encounter, I heard people walking around my house, changing from walls to ceiling to floor. This wasn't rats or anything. It was definitely human footsteps. Crazy. I was fully awake and alert at the time when these footsteps were happening. I didn't get the sense that I shouldn't be seeing it or anything. If anything, it was more felt like I was meant to see it. I know what I saw, and that was real, and not an illusion from a light or anything else. That's all I can think of for now. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer. I'm also not a big believer of the paranormal and typically find it to be most untrue, and never really believed in ghosts or anything similar. However, I still have no possible way to explain what I saw. Now, he sounds, or she, I don't know if it was he or she, but they sound like they really looked into this. And they've really, studied these encounters. What do you guys think? I mean, he really, definitely seemed like I said, they've researched it. And comparing what they saw to all the stickman qualifications. It's crazy. So what do you guys think of these black stickmen? Over on shadowsofthemoon.net, there are pictures, or I will be putting pictures up, of different encounters of stickmen. Go to shadowsofthemoon.com and you'll see podcast talk. There's a forum there just for the podcast. So when I do have pictures or other, stuff, videos that you guys have sent me or whatnot, I'll throw it right there so you guys know. With that being said, that's the end of the podcast, guys. I hope you enjoyed these stories. What do you think these stickmen are? Crazy, right? They're not shadow men or shadow people. They're like stick drawing. I couldn't imagine walking down the road and seeing these like people. Like, kids draw. Walking, just chilling, walking across the road. Do you think they are the Grim Reaper? That's why people feel that they have the dread? I don't know. You tell me. All right, guys. With that being said, like I said, we're going to end this podcast. I hope you liked the show. And, yeah, stay tuned. I'm not sure what we're talking about next, but it'll be up next Tuesday. All right, guys. I love you. Be safe. And remember, find something today to smile with your eyes. Night, everybody.